Hello and welcome, everybody. It's so lovely to see you all here. Just now, Nadine was telling you a little bit about the stories behind our spaces, and I think in a moment we're going to have some slides coming up here that show you the stained glass windows in the Bedouin tent. Our Bedouin tent was designed to host sensitive conversations amongst those who might disagree or be in conflict with one another. It was designed by Keith Critchlow and was inspired by the principles of sacred geometry. Can I just ask, can everyone hear me all right? Is the mic a little weird? Everyone can hear, great. So while we're waiting for those slides to come up, if you haven't seen them already, do please go and have a look. These, the tent windows are very beautifully designed with, here you can see there's 7 windows. Each one says the word for peace in a different language, and each window depicts these suns and moons at different cycles, different phases of their orbits, and also trees that are sacred to different religions and different cultures. And so the tent windows, they remind us of how these themes of land, faith, and belonging are inextricably intertwined in the human experience. They also remind us how contested stories of land, faith, identity, and belonging are at the root of most geopolitical and civil conflicts throughout history. These are the things that define us, uplift us, and inspire us. They are also things we tend to have conflicts about. We're currently living through a time of growing conflict on the world stage and across the West. We're seeing increasing division between groups who view these themes of land, identity, and belonging in very different ways. We're seeing growing polarization on the issue of climate and on net zero in particular. Those who oppose net zero point to historic failures in the execution of energy transition policies. They dispute the idea that the energy transition has been or will be low cost, and they say the projected timescales are unrealistic and unachievable. They say deindustrialization has been a disaster for Western economies, and particularly for the working class. On this view, energy security is linked to national security and international stability. I am sure we are all well familiar with these debates. As we move deeper into a collective civilizational crisis, we're also seeing these debates becoming more explicitly philosophical rather than just political, as different groups define the core values and beliefs that underpin their vision for civilization and humanity's future. Critics of net zero and of the environmental movement will often liken the green movement to a religious cult. They say that it rests on a theology of earth worship, which runs counter to Western values. They worry about it as a new and dangerous form of religious fundamentalism. They often criticize the environmental movement for having a shadow side, which can be misanthropic, morally relativist, and dangerously utopian. They draw links between environmentalism and millenarianism, a kind of religiously informed apocalypticism that tends to arise at different historic moments throughout history. So this is how some people view spiritual ecology. Maybe it seems a bit odd to open a festival by talking about how people disagree with its central theme. And I'm not raising these critiques to do something clever like argue them all out of hand. I rather prefer to welcome them in and to invite us to consider them today. But I do have a few things I would like to say. The first thing is that I know deep ecologists who are progressives, conservatives, and everything in between. I also know spiritual ecologists whose theologies and worldviews are wildly different to one another and who disagree with one another. Spiritual ecology is not a monoculture. I hesitate to say even that it is a worldview, nor is it something new. The idea that there is a special bond between human beings and creation, that there is a deep and sacred mystery alive in the natural world, that our right relationship to creation is one of care, custodianship, and love. These ideas can be traced back through every religion and culture around the world. These are inherently wholesome, naturally arising beliefs that you find in every civilization and, I believe, in every human heart. They reflect a basic, universal experience. In the words of Mary Oliver, the door to the woods is the door to the temple. When we see a beautiful landscape, a sunrise, when we are immersed in nature, it opens us to feelings of awe, wonder, and beauty. This is a relatable experience whether you are a Buddhist, a Christian, an atheist, an agnostic, or whatever. And it's also relatable whether you view Earth as a divine being, or whether you view a specific land with love and a sense of belonging as the homeland of your ancestors. These are both quite different orientations, but they both can be understood as being expressions of deep ecology. During the course of this festival, we will be hearing from many people, authors and thinkers and artists and scholars and activists, from across faith and political perspectives, from urban and rural and from different parts of the UK and from all around the world. We'll hear Christian and Muslim interpretations of Laudato Si. We'll hear from a South African wilderness walker, from experts in conservation, in plant intelligence and communication. We'll hear from experts on economic localization, land management, farming, and so much more. We'll also have some workshops and talks looking at conflict resilience and depolarization. This event is not about putting forward one view of spiritual ecology, one theology, or any one particular political paradigm. It's about celebrating the broad depth and breadth of the spiritual ecology movement. At St. Ethelburga's, our motto is bridging divides and loving earth, and we believe that peacemaking and care for land and nature go hand in hand. And we believe that when we come together on the shared common ground of our love for land and nature, that this helps us to engage more constructively with tension and disagreement. And I really hope that over the next 2 days, you meet someone new, you make some new friends, you hear something that inspires and uplifts you, maybe also hear something that challenges you. Last Friday, we held the opening event of the festival, which was an overnight planting pilgrimage across London, and now I'm going to hand over to Tara, who's going to tell you a bit about that event.
Thank you, Claire. I'd just like to give you a little taste of last weekend's overnight planting pilgrimage. That was the start of the festival, and 40 people, many of them in this room, were with us for this really, really special event. But before I do, I'd just love to ask you to turn to the person next to you and ask your neighbour, what does pilgrimage mean for you? Have you been on a long walk before? And if so, what was the landscape? just a couple of moments each way to talk through that. Okay, so just finishing up those conversations. Wonderful. So the overnight pilgrimage was a really long night of walking, and it wasn't so much about ideas or words, but about an embodied experience. It was an opportunity for us to weave together an inner landscape with an outer one, to connect the human and the non-human worlds, and to bring our connection and our commitment to the natural world into the everyday streets of London that are around us. It was also about community, and as we walked, we were creating a network of connection, prayer, and love for Earth as expressed by the different faith communities and hidden community gardens who hosted us along the way. At each site that we stopped at, we planted a different tree that was chosen by that community for its particular meaning. So we started out at dusk from St. Ethelburga's, and we planted a hawthorn tree, which you'll be able to see in the courtyard there, with an interfaith ceremony. There was a really gusty breeze as we started, and it felt like rain was on the way. We set out into the busy Friday night, but quickly were drawn down the small side streets and the unknown alleyways. We stopped by the Bevismark Synagogue. We were met by a small choir and a welcome cup of tea at St. Matthew's Church, and after a much longer walk, we filed off the Bethnal Green Road through a small red door and into a shrine room at the London Buddhist Centre, where we were led in meditation before planting a cherry tree in the courtyard. And then, shifting into silence and the darker part of the night, we walked a 2-hour stretch of the canal. We were greeted at the Aga Khan Centre in King's Cross with a rest, a private viewing of an art exhibition about the lives of trees, and a lush 9th-storey roof garden where we planted a rose bush with the empty streets of King's Cross far below us. And now it started to really rain. Stepping outside of the centre, we were met by the very surreal sight of the pink flashing lights of 15 rickshaws. And forgetting our tired 3 a.m. bodies, we were transported to the beautiful Calthorpe Community Garden, who had opened up for us, made a fire, and we had song and planted a black mulberry bush. Then we went on to the hidden Phoenix Garden in Soho and to the Brahma Kumari's inner space in Covent Garden. And finally, in the early morning drizzle, we crossed the river on the Millennium Bridge over to St. Paul's. There we planted a large dove tree and lay on the floor of the cathedral with our tired voices humming in harmony up to the creation mosaics of the domed ceiling. So I'd love to just share a really short excerpt by one of our pilgrims talking about it on the night.
I was part of planting what is known as the fire tree or the fire bush, and it's got beautiful red flowers, and we were asked to choose the tree that called out to us. And the reason I picked to stand by the fire bush was because I think England could use a little bit of color, and it was bright and red. And what was beautiful that our planting time came at 4 a.m. so the sun was just rising, and just as we planted the tree, an incredible blackbird started calling, and the light had just gone dawn. And as soon as we finished planting in the Phoenix Garden, I think, somebody told us that once the berries on the fire bush come, that's the blackbirds come to feed on them. So it was almost like the blackbird knew that we were planting a bush, and it was very surreal, very beautiful.
The last one got some calls. So that was just one moment of a night full of moments like that. Thank you, Pooja. So we saw the overnight planting pilgrimage really as a practice for these dark times. we were learning to walk at night in the dark, but in community and in connection with the sacred and living world that's all around us. So we're just going to do a thing now of creating some of the sounds of that night and creating the weather. So maybe if the very... No, it's okay. So if you can just each, when I look at you, copy what I'm doing, and then keep doing that thing until I come round and look at you again and get you to do something else. Hopefully it'll work. We'll start here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Taro. So today, this morning, we're setting out on a journey, and we may encounter some different kinds of weather over the next couple of days. Some radiant blue skies of inspiration, connection, new friendships formed, maybe some low mists of confusion or uncertainty. We may also encounter some turbulent inner or outer weather. When we're talking about peace and environment, there's some dark places we may be walking through together, and we also may encounter some conflict and disagreement. So there may be some storm clouds that come into your experience. And what we like to say at St. Ethelburga is that one of the great qualities, one of the great acts of leadership that any peacemaker can make is to stand up in the midst of a storm when it feels as though things are so dark and that storm is never going to end, and to hold up a light of hope that we can find a destination beyond the storm. And I hope this little exercise gives you just a little seed thought of inspiration. If you do encounter some turbulent weather over the course of this weekend, you can think back to this moment and know we've traveled through a storm together already and we've made it out the other side. Finally, I'd just like to return to the theme of the tent windows and share a very short blessing for peacemakers, which is inspired by the windows in the tent. Bless the mango, apple, date, lemon, orange, fig, and pine. Bless the moon at the full, at the wax, and the wane. Bless the earth's orbit around the sun and the moon's orbit around the earth. Bless those who say Saimu, Maitra, Shanti, peace, shalom, salam, and Thai. Bless how our own hopes for peace are written in the soil, sky, leaf, and fruit of our homelands, and in the language of our ancestry. May we reflect the light of peace to one another, and may we carry this light out from our gathering, offering it to all other sentient beings and to the earth. Thank you very much.